We're here today in the ghost town of Centralia, or more specifically the lumber mill site of Centralia. The actual town where people live is a few hundred yards that way behind the camera. We're going to go look over there in a little bit, but there, from what I understand, that we know of, is nothing remaining. Right now we're standing on top of the bank of the float pond. Behind me is the float pond. It was created by dredging. It was extensive. It was way back in the back. It was flooded by a series of canals. For that purpose, the cypress apparently had to be kept wet in order to keep it from cracking before it was milled, before it was cut into smaller pieces. So these ginormous logs would have been just floating in here, and it was quite extensive. It was quite thick, very densely covered. Now, I just learned today that a few of these logs sank because they were hollow, and we're standing here looking at a few of them. This is over 100-year-old stump, basically. Just a hollowed out shell of the original log, but it is the original old growth cypress that was harvested back in the day. What the camera is standing on and what we're standing next to is the winch area and the slide area to bring the logs up to mill them off in the back. And we're going to take a look at all this right now. Try to do it without too much herky-jerky. Okay, we're going to go down into the float pond itself. I've only been here one time before, and this was, it was about the same. It was about as dry as it is right now. It wasn't really soaking wet, but from what I understand, there are times when it does get very, very wet. Okay, this log, and this log here, and then some in the back, further back over that way, are the remains of the dried up float pond. They've sunk to the bottom and they were never recovered. They weren't necessary. They decided they didn't want them anyway. All this bank area that we see here, this is all created by dredging machines. And some of my terminology is not going to be perfect by any stretch. I'm going off of my own personal knowledge and not the knowledge of an engineer or someone who studies these kinds of machinery, this kind of machinery, as a hobby. So this area here, they would roll the logs up perpendicular, not parallel, but this way basically, and roll them on up this slide out of this float pond. They would do that with a winch, a machinery, a piece of machinery that was bolted to the top of those two pylons, and you can see that pretty clearly once we get up there. Also, much of what we know is conjecture. Some is, straight up, we know exactly what we're talking about, knowledge. Other parts of it is, we're just guessing. Based on, certain amount of experience and knowledge in such things. Here are the bolts that held the machinery on either side. The winch would have ran down the middle, and at some point it would have been slid off. Up into the area we're going to now. Okay, and we get, none of these trees are here, of course, as is usually the case 90% of the places we go. The trees were not, excuse me, the trees were not part of the original landscape. They've grown up since then. This is neat, this is cool. There's a series of these foundations. Some are oblong, well the ones on the right are oblong and about 4 feet maybe. These are pyramid shaped for weight and maybe 18 inches by 18 inches maybe on the top. And there's a series of them. They go all the way to the back. They go all the way back through here. And they're significant. Well, there's some more pyramid shape on the other side. So this all was leading to moving these things along down towards the saw site. And so here, right here, we stop. There's 1, 2, 3, let's see, 4, 5, 6 of these of these rows like this, the oblong ones next to the pyramid shaped ones. So there's 6 sets of those leading back to the float pond, the top of the slide that you'll pull the wood out of, pull the tree out of. It was a naked tree. And then I guess it would be separated based on whatever criteria they used at the time. And we see some more of these pyramid shaped foundations, but they're in the ground further. They're not as high up. And again, these all lead straight to the back, to back here. And then when we start seeing different, more substantial foundations. With bolts on them again to hold machinery of some sort. The bolts there. These are taller, much longer, probably 6, 7 feet long by 3, 4 feet wide, maybe. Just a guess. There's some more, and they all have these pipes coming up out of them in addition to the bolts. We see these big bolts everywhere. Well, not on every one of these, but we see them on a lot of them. So some of these would not have had the bolts there, which means they would not have held machinery down, which is strictly what the bolts are there for, to hold the machinery down. Hold it in place while it's being operated, whether it be a winch or a saw or whatever it might be. Oh, here's a piece that's chipped off. Well, this is chipped off right here. You get to see some of the interior of the concrete that was used. This was not tabby or coquina. This was a more modern version of concrete. This is the most extensive abandoned site that we've been to that hasn't been documented. This is not popularly known. This is not recognized by the national government as far as being on the National Register or anything like that. This is an abandoned and not unknown site, but not a publicized site. It's not protected in any way. All over we're seeing these smaller pyramid-shaped foundations. Ow. And we're moving over here to this area. Because we're going to look at these. These are longer. These are much longer. These are probably 15 feet maybe. Maybe 20 feet. I don't know. They're good little ways. And there's only 2 of them. So these things start to change a little bit as we get towards the saw site. The saw site is right straight ahead of us over here. This is where the saw was. And we have more and more of these. Somebody from that group just left their bottle out there, I bet you. Ooh, that's a big old spider nest. Okay, we know from earlier that the drying yard, after it was cut, had to be dried, is behind us by, I don't know, decent little ways, half mile maybe. Alright, and this is the saw site. This is where the saw was located. These poles are significant because they were holding, it's like an extra strength for the whatever was being held on top of here. It's bolted down here, and they ran into the original foundation. You can see here, this area right in through here is where it's been chipped away by time. It would have been like that one. And here we have the indentations for the wood, whatever wood would have been placed in there to for whatever purpose. I mean, to aid in what they were doing, certainly. And that's that part of it. Here's another part of it. I'm not sure quite how this worked, other than, you know, this might have been the engine and that turned it or cranked it or something. I mean, this all worked in conjunction with each other. This whole little area right here would have been the heart and center of this place, of this operation. Sawmill, lumber mill company. So we're going to go over here now. I don't know what this building was used for, but there was this brick foundation of a building over here, which is quite cool. would have been some, within this building, there would have been some sort of machinery. We see some bolts there on a small foundation. The building itself ran from there along this wall to right here's the other corner. And we're going to walk through here. And we're going to see the other wall, the other end of it is over here. So that's how big that building would have been. 20 yards maybe. Yeah, 25. So that's pretty much it that we know of right now for the sawmill, lumber mill, Centralia. But it's pretty extensive. It's easily the most extensive of its type that we've ever seen as far as, again, it's not protected, it's not nationally recognized, it's not in any way recognized by any kind of protective organization. And people do, it's not hidden, it's not off limits, but people do come out here and monkey around with stuff, although I see no evidence of that in this latest visit. I see no holes, no digging. The things that I saw that are loose, that are on top of some of these pylons, I've seen them again, and that was probably 3, if not 4 years since we've been out here. So it appears, you know, it's going to be well. It's well intact. Here's another piece that's fallen off of the corner edge right there. But I suspect a lot of that will change. There's a local historical society that plans to put a sign up saying, "Here was Centralia." Now that might be good on some level, but on a level of letting people know that this place even exists, it's not good. It's simply going to draw more people here. It may, I don't know, maybe they want some sort of national recognition for this place, the National Register of Historic Sites or something like that. But for right now, this is like it is. It's pristine. We've seen it pristine. It's still pristine, and that makes it rather unique to me, and makes it very, very cool to see it like this, to see it in its natural state that it's been in for many years. So we're going to shut it down and photograph it and head down the road.